We start weekend number 3 of the season. What have you seen so far as it pertains to SEC teams that jumps off the page at you?
Well, I think that I came into the season expecting that Florida was going to have a really good offense, but I didn't realize that Jack Caglione was going to have 11 home runs at this point of the season. So that's been pretty loud, just seeing the way that everything has come together offensively for the Gators.
Hey, Teddy, I'm going to interrupt you. Did you see this on Twitter last night? I'd love to. I don't remember which Twitter account it was, but somebody put a picture of him hitting another home run, and it said Cagliotani. I thought that was pretty good.
In Florida, one of their beat writers, Nick De La Torre, has been calling him Jack Tani. It's at first when that kind of talk started, and I guess I was in January, that some people in Florida started getting excited about it. I was like, well, okay, let's see how it goes. And then he's leading the nation in home runs here, in early March, and he's been a key member of the rotation. It's starting to become more real to me. We'll see how it goes in SEC play, but he's really special. So that's been exciting. And I think what Georgia and South Carolina have done, those two teams were, I thought they'd be good this year, but I wasn't quite sure how good. And so them beating ACC opponents in their rivalry series last weekend, I thought was significant. And they've both started the year really well offensively too, which isn't surprising, but I think is important for both of those clubs.
I think those are all good things. And it's going to be interesting to see where they go, because outside Georgia Tech a little banged up, and Clemson was the first test that South Carolina had this year, and they were able to win 2 out of 3. I do think that getting into league play and seeing how those teams continue to play is something worth watching. What about if we pull it back a little closer to Mississippi? Your 2.5, 3 week impressions of Ole Miss, Mississippi State, and Southern Miss.
Well, I think Ole Miss has been really good, maybe about what I would have expected, especially when you consider that they've been without Hunter Elliott the last couple weeks. And I think it's important that he, they got the news that he should be able to return this season, and they got the start that they got from Jack Doherty last week. I thought all of that has come together pretty well. The offense has been rolling right along. They're still working some things out on the mound, it seems like, but I think that they've been in a good place so far. Southern Miss, I actually just wrote about them today at baseballamerica.com, and it's been a little up and down to this point, but 8-4, given the competition that they've played, I think is pretty good, especially getting sweeps of DBU and Liberty. I think that'll look pretty good on their resume come March. They're also definitely still trying to figure it out on the mound. The rotation seems set. They seem like they've found a couple guys they can rely on in the bullpen. Now they just have to figure out how to expand that. And, given what Christian Ostrander has been able to do as the pitching coach there and the talent they've collected, I feel confident they will figure it out. But what you've seen in the midweeks against Mississippi State and Ole Miss is probably indicative of the fact that they don't have the depth that they had a year ago. So the offense is going to have to make up for that. And to this point, it hasn't. But I feel like they'll be okay as the season continues. Mississippi State is just confusing at this point. It's been up and down. They're looking for consistency. They haven't found it. And look, with as many new faces as they have on that roster, that's to be expected. If you look at teams like Auburn and A&M a year ago, which also went heavily into the portal, like Mississippi State did over the summer, it took them time to figure things out before they became Omaha clubs. So Mississippi State hopes that they're on that kind of path, but I'm not surprised that they have had, these very inconsistent swings within the first few weeks of the season.
Teddy, I did something a couple of days ago just for giggles. I pulled up the RPI, which is, you want to talk about an exercise in futility at this point of the season. This is the time of year where you see LSU win a game and drop 17 spots. Ole Miss win a single game and they move up 32 spots. The moves are dramatic. So I would ask you this, because people have become slaves to these formulas, right? Whether it's the net in basketball or the RPI in baseball, whatever it is that's going to determine postseason. And so people are naturally curious, when is the proper time to start looking at and caring about RPI?
We're still a couple weeks away from it. I will, within the next week or two, I'll probably start looking more seriously at it. Like, I'm aware of what's happening sometimes. I don't look at it on a daily basis. I do pop it open every once in a while early in the season, but we're still a couple weeks away from it. I'd say probably 2 weeks, get in 1 week of SEC play before we can really look at it. And even then, we do have to acknowledge that it still will be a little, like you mentioned, you can get wild swings just based on a game or a weekend. But I think it will start to firm up within a couple weeks. And the games all matter the same. So what's happening now matters. But yeah, right now it's open to pretty wild fluctuations.
So this weekend, final weekend before non-conference play, most of the tournaments have settled down. This is kind of a tune-up week for everybody before they jump into league play, at least in the SEC. So let's skip over this weekend. Let's just kind of assume that, generally speaking, the results are good. Ole Miss, in the opening weekend of league play, heads to Nashville to take on Vanderbilt. Vandy's been kind of interesting so far. They are not a great team, but they're not a bad team. They've got talented arms. You assume that they're going to swing it okay, although they haven't been great. What is that series going to look like to start conference play?
That one's really interesting because not only do you have these two teams that we think are top 10 teams, but you have two teams that are kind of coming at it from different ways. So
yeah.
Is Ole Miss's offense going to win out, or is Vanderbilt's pitching going to win out? And if Vanderbilt gets to play the series it wants to play, then Ole Miss might be in trouble. Like, are they actually going to be able to outpitch Vanderbilt on the road? That feels unlikely. But if they're able to take it to Vanderbilt's pitching, is Vanderbilt's offense going to be able to keep up with them? Also feels a little unlikely. The one thing about Vanderbilt's offense so far is that, yes, the numbers don't look good. If you look at SEC stats, they're at the bottom of most of the categories right now. But they've also played a pretty difficult schedule, especially relative to teams like South Carolina that did nothing before playing Clemson. It's hard to know exactly what Vanderbilt is, but I do feel comfortable saying that they're not going to be super offensive. They're not going to be very powerful. They're going to try and beat you with their pitching. So Ole Miss's bats are going to have their work cut out for them, but holding the Rebels down for 27 innings is going to be a tough task for anyone. So I actually kind of like Ole Miss's chances on the road there right now, but I'm fascinated by that series.
Same thing for Mississippi State. They go on the road to start league play, but they go to Lexington, Kentucky. And who knows what the weather is going to be, right? I mean, that's just one of the factors that you look at in an early season conference series in Lexington. It might be 38 or it might be 68, and you hope it's 68. But it feels to me like this is about as good an opportunity for a good start in league play for Mississippi State as exists this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's a reasonable expectation that, Kentucky's probably going to be, down there near the bottom of the East. That's what we're expecting. I also like it as a test for Mississippi State's offense because, that ballpark plays big to begin with, which is a change from how things used to be in Lexington.
Yeah.
And then you're right. If it's cold, it's going to play even more to the pitcher's advantage. Maybe that's good for Mississippi State because right now its pitching staff could use an assist, I feel like. But it also does kind of take away from what the Bulldogs do best, at least right now, which is swing the bats. So they're going to have to keep up with a pretty good Kentucky pitching staff. And going on the road is never easy in this league. But, if they had to go on the road, that is probably the place that you would pick.
Final thing for you, and Teddy, we've only got a minute left. It's crazy how if you look at Mississippi State's schedule and Ole Miss's schedule, they are the inverse. Ole Miss has a murderer's row for like the first 6 weeks and then a chance to maybe pile up some wins at the end. Mississippi State needs to pile up wins in the first half of the season because their final 4 weekends are insane.
Yeah, that's tough. And I think it's, it's important that Mississippi State find its footing for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that they're still just trying to figure out who they are. So maybe that's better for who they are as a team because, if they got punched in the face right away, sometimes in the SEC you get into it's easy to tailspin, and you don't
Could
want
very
that,
well,
especially after what happened.
Could very well be the case. Thanks as always, Teddy.